Hello and welcome to Criminal Justice in a Nutshell. My name is John Fisher, and today we're going to be talking about the history of police, or policing history. I am recording today from Dinosaur Valley State Park. It is located in Glen Rose, Texas, or just outside of Glen Rose, Texas, along the hook of the Paluxy River, or the Paluxy River. And here is where there were, from the Cretaceous period, there were a lot of dinosaurs here. And when the river's not running so full, it's here in East Texas or West Texas, we're southwest of Fort Worth. There's been a lot of rain and the river is up. It's about waist deep now at the place where the dinosaur tracks are located. And so you can't really see them, but we were out here. We've been hiking and swimming in the river, and it's been a lot of fun. But if you ever get the opportunity to come to Dinosaur Valley State Park in Glen Rose, Texas, make sure that you go ahead and do so. But today we're going to talk about policing, and we're going to talk about the history and the establishment of the police. The Latin word politia, P-O-L-I-T-I-A, it means civil administration. It goes all the way back to the Greek word polis, or which means city, and it became police by the French. The French took the word and made it police, and then the English took it, and it meant the civil administration. And this is something that we're still looking at. And we still see the police as the civil administration. They are the face of government. Yes, we have the president currently. It's President Obama. He has 6 months left in office. It's currently the end of June. It's the last week of June 2016. So President Obama has about 6 months left in office, but he's not really the government. He's in Washington, D.C. The legislators, they make laws, they do all kinds of things with laws, but they're not really our government either. Our government are the police. We've got the mayor, we've got the city councils, we've got the state legislatures, the governors, and all of those things. But the face of government is the police. Okay? When we think about government and enforcing the law, it is the police that come to mind. And it started way back when, in early days of Latin history. Okay. The Praetorian Guard would run, they would walk the streets of Rome, the Praetorian Guard, and they were not only police officers, but they were also judge, jury, and executioner. If they found a crime, they found somebody breaking the law, they would punish them right there on the spot. They wouldn't wait for any other issues or times to come about. They wouldn't take them to jail. They would punish them. Normally it was corporal punishment right there on the spot. And in Roman history, in the Roman times, punishment for just about every crime was death. The age of accountability was 2. So if you ever had a toddler that went into, or a 6-year-old, I have a 7-year-old that's gotten into this taking things from the stores. I catch him and I smack his hand and I bring him back to the manager of the store and make him apologize for stealing. In Roman days, that was an automatic death sentence. Stealing in Rome was a death penalty. If you were over the age of 2, you should have known better. Along with the Praetorian Guard, there were the vigils. The vigils were the firefighters of ancient Rome, and they eventually took over law enforcement. The Praetorian Guard had to go fight battles and go to war and protect Rome from foreign invaders. So the vigils got the law enforcement activity and history. King Alfred the Great, after Rome fell, King Alfred the Great, whom a lot believe is the king that was established or is known and is regarded as King Arthur. I'm reading a book series right now called The Last Kingdom by Bernard Cornwell, and it's got Alfred the Great in it. And Alfred the Great established a system of mutual pledge, which was a form of societal controls. okay, where citizens grouped together to protect each other from outsiders. Okay, they get into tithings, which was 10 families. They would group together, they would protect one another, they would assume the responsibility of the acts of the group members. Okay, they worked as a family as they get together. They would build a wall around their city and around their tithing, and they would establish safety. And this went on for centuries, because Alfred the Great was running around in the 800s, and he turned around, and until for almost 1,000 years, this tithing system, this communal protection of the community was put together. They would, if there trouble occurred during these tithings, 10 tithings would be 100 families. London had 10 tithings. It would become a major metropolitan area. But if there was a problem, if something came up, the constable, the person who was on the night watch, would raise a hue and cry. And this hue and cry would raise and bring about a new world. It would bring about, not a new world, but I would scream, "Hey, I need help, I need help, 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 help." And everybody in the community would come running to help. The constable would have to serve a particular night, and they'd have to, all the men in the community would take turns. If you refused to take your turn, they would kick you out of the tithing, and you would have to leave. Well, once people get some money and they gain some wealth, they find themselves not wanting to stay up all night watching and being the night watchman. So they would hire somebody to take their job and say, "Hey, I don't want to go do my share tonight. I'll pay you to go do it for me." And now all of a sudden we have what's known as the Shire Reef. The Shire Reef would watch this community at night. And then eventually he was hired by the Lord of the Manor, and he was intended, and part of his job was to go collect taxes. And that's why the sheriff today, he evicts people from their homes, he places and he issues tax liens, he goes and collects taxes, and he does all of those types of things. The watch and ward required all men to give in the town to serve on the night watch. The night watch, therefore, can be seen as the most rudimentary form of a metropolitan police department. Okay, they patrol the streets from dusk until dawn to ensure that the people were indoors, they were quiet, and that there were no strangers running around. One of the things that we'd hear the crier, "It's 11 o'clock and all is well." And the town crier running around with the night watchman, he'd light the oil lamps. He'd make sure that everything was okay. And every hour or so, he would make a call. "It's midnight and all is well." And this went on until King Henry VIII. And Henry VIII established the thief takers. The thief takers were a group of private citizens. They were the predecessors of today's bounty hunters. The thief takers they had no official status, but they were paid by the king for every criminal that they arrested and brought before the king. Okay, so if you were caught stealing or something, a thief taker, a bounty hunter would come get you, and they would drag you before the king. The king would pay you, and then you would find yourself at the wrong end of the king. In 1829, Sir Robert Peel established the very first professional modern police organization. He is known as the father of policing, and he established a code of conduct because the thief takers, Jack Wild was one of the best, most famous thief takers in the world. But Jack Wild was also a thief, and he was a fence, and he would go and he would capture his competitors and bring them before the king. Eventually, Jack Wild was hung, but there was no loyalty and honor between thieves, and one thief would take another thief to the king, and Jack Wild was one of the best at it. Robert Peel, he was a knight in 1829. He established the first, like I said, he established the first professional police force. He established a code of conduct, and he established a series of principles for law enforcement. And he's famous for, and what he has said, and I teach this in every policing class that I have, is that the police are the public and the public are the police. If you do not have a good relationship between the public and the police, you don't have a police force. If the people do not trust the police cannot do their job. Robert Peel also stated that you measured the success of a police department not by their arrest record, like they do today. Today, you go to a police department's website and they say, we've got a 5-minute response time, we've had 1,000 arrests with 999 convictions, we're a great police department. And that's not what the police are about. The police are the city administration. They are the face of the government. They are who maintains order within the city and makes the city a peaceful place to be. If the people don't trust the police, the police have no grounds. So Robert Peel, 100 years ago, almost 200 years ago now, came up with 9 principles. The first principle was that the basic mission for which the police exist is to prevent crime and disorder. Okay? They're to prevent crime. Okay? Not respond to crime, but to prevent crime. Principle 2 is the ability of the police to perform their duties is dependent upon public approval of their actions. If the public do not approve of you, they don't like what you're doing, you're not going to get anything done. Principle 3, the police must secure the willing cooperation of the public in voluntary observance of the law. Okay. There is one police officer for almost every 1,000 or so citizens. If the citizens, let's just, for example, the New York area has 12 million people in the New York City metropolitan area and only 32,000 police officers. Or 36,000 police officers. If the people of New York decided to rise up against the city of New York and the state of New York, what could the police do about it? Absolutely nothing. So the police have to gain the voluntary observance of the law on the part of the public, or else nothing will be done. 4, the degree of cooperation of the police that can be secured diminishes proportionally the necessity of the use of physical force. Okay, if you can get the cooperation of the community, there will be no use of force needed. Okay, police seek and preserve public favor, not by catering to public needs like we see in Baltimore and Ferguson. We see the police in Philadelphia. The police are kowtowing to the needs and the wants of the people. And all that's going to do is increase violence. You need to show an absolute impartiality, and your loyalty is to the law. It's not to one group of people over another. Opinion 6 is the police use physical force to the extent necessary to secure the observance of the law or to restore order, only when the exercise of persuasion, advice, and warning is found to be insufficient. Police officers should not have to resort to physical force unless they've exhausted everything else. Police departments and police officers are trained to fight. They're trained for the use of force. The current Texas State Police Academy is 681 hours. and most of those are about using force. Most of the hours are about using force. In fact, most of the police academy is to ensure that the police officer goes home at the end of the day. Now, I saw on Facebook, there was challenge. This idiot on Facebook was saying, hey, I challenge all police officers to come fight me. You leave your gun and your stick and your taser and all of that stuff at home and just fight me, mano y mano. If you beat me, I'll give you $1,000. He's going to lose because the cops are trained to go home at the end of the day. And they're trained to fight with their hands just as much as they are with their guns and their tasers and their sticks. The guns and the tasers and the sticks just make life a little easier. Principle 7, police at all times should maintain a relationship with the public that gives reality to the historic tradition. The police are the public are the police. Police being only members of the public. Okay, they're not outside the public, they're part of the public and part of the police system. Principle 8, police should always direct their actions strictly towards the functions and never appear to usurp the powers of the judiciary. They should not punish people in the street. That's the job for the judge. They should not take graft. They should not take bribes. They should not usurp the kindness and the generosity of the community that they police. And then the ninth is that the test of police efficiency is the absence of crime and disorder, not the visible evidence of police action and dealing with it. Okay, what measures crime and which measures the success of a police department is that the community is living well together and there is no crime. Okay, the oldest police department in the United States was established in Boston in 1834. Okay, in 1834, the first professional police office, the police department, they wore blue wool uniforms with copper buttons. There were 14 copper buttons on their breeches, and there was 9 copper buttons on their blouse. And that's how we came up with the term cops. A lot of people are going to tell you it's constable on patrol, it's this or it's that, or it's something or another. But it's not. It's not at all. What it is the copper buttons. At first, they were called coppers. Yeah, it's the coppers, remember James Cagney? Yeah, the coppers are coming. The coppers. Well, eventually we get lazy. We're Americans, so coppers became cops. Police operations, historically, in the United States, police officers have been white males, veterans of the military, high school educated, and they're used to taking and carrying out orders. Those times are changing. We're finding that police officers are becoming more multicultural. They're both genders. They're all different races and ethnic groups. They don't have military, but what they have is education. Okay, there's a lot of education involved. Our policing history in the United States, first was the urban experience from Boston, like I mentioned. The early police officer's job was primitive. He was an American urban police officer. His jobs varied. But in the South, the policing came out of the slave patrols. And the slave patrols were extremely set up to hunt for runaway slaves. And they became the police in the South. So the extreme racism that we found, or the institutional racism prior to 1865, just moved over into the police department. And this is what we're seeing a lot of the complaints by the African American population. In the frontier world, we had a completely different experience. They had sheriffs and town marshals. The sheriffs were responsible for the county. The town marshal was responsible for the town. And they worked hard to get there. My nutshell lectures are normally 15 minutes long. This one is already at 20 minutes. So a brief history or a brief look into the history and the establishment of policing and the Peelian principles, which all law enforcement should be set upon, is the Robert Peel's principles of policing. The people are the police are the people. And if your people don't trust your police force is ineffective, and it will become corrupt. So this is John Fisher with Criminal Justice in a Nutshell. Police history. My name is John Fisher. Again, it is John Fisher. And hey, that's 3 times I've told you my name in less than a minute. Anyway, I hope that you have a very good day, and I hope that this brief lecturette has helped you understand the history and the development of policing.